Joining me on stage here is Edward McNair, and joining us remotely is Elizabeth Cully. We are presenting the NANOG 84 committee meeting. Edward is the executive director of NANOG, and Elizabeth is the program committee secretary. And I'm still Ognitov, the program committee vice chair. We're all very happy to be addressing you again today.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you guys are all doing well and have survived the festivities of the night before. We've got a kind of a tight schedule, so I'll kind of jump right into things. So first thing I'd like to talk about is the ICANN, ISOC, NANOG outreach efforts. The first fruits of those labors are starting to come about, and they've been pretty magnificent for the short period of time that we've been working on them. Our goal is to collaborate together, bring our resources together, and see how we can better outreach efforts within North America. And our early accomplishments are that ISEC will be sponsoring individuals to from underserved regions to attend NANOG events, very much like the NCI program that we have. NANOG will also leverage our Discourse Community Forum as a way to support outreach efforts within the underserved regions so that we can get NANOG volunteers to scan those discourse lists and to be able to help people, once they leave the events, to be able to get the help and resources they need to continue to support their communities. ICANN has also submitted a talk for NANOG 85 coming up in Montreal. And NANOG will also be presenting at ICON 73. So we're trying to find ways that we can collaborate together to further outreach initiatives within North America. Development updates. So these are a list of some of the projects they're going to be working on for 2022. First and foremost is the meeting appointment tool. We know that's been something that's been a strong demand for the community and also from our sponsors, and we're addressing that. Features, functionality, and scope of work have been shared with our community beta testers for feedback. We've started UI development on it, and once the UI is complete within the next 30 days, we'll pass it on to our beta testers for evaluation and for comments and feedback. Once that is all cleared out, we start working on the back-end functionality with the goal of having a beta in NANOG 85 in Montreal, and then the final version to be released at NANOG 86. In addition, at NANOG 86, we're going to bring back our on-demand badge printing service, so you will get your badges printed right away at printers and queues. And we'll also be making some extensive updates to the program committee tool. NANOG Community Forum. So the NANOG Community Forum is a piece that we're trying to help and expand how we can outreach to our community, how we can get people involved in the conversation, how can we maintain community beyond our meetings. Right now we meet 3 times a year, and then when you leave this place, we're trying to continue that conversation, continue that community. One of the things that we're doing to extend that is to have affinity groups. So affinity groups are designed to foster community and self-organizing groups which will expand the community forum. Screw that. We're expanding the community forum to include affinity groups. They're designed to allow like-minded people, who have common interests to get together and to form groups and interests that they care about. We've created a few groups to get started. But if you're interested in a group that you don't find in our forum, you can just reach out to us and we'll add it. So to give you kind of an overview of how it works and functions, here's kind of the homepage of our community group. If you would look on your lower, I guess that would be for you, the lower left-hand side, you'd see a mailing list. Scrolling down from there, you'd see a complete list of different groups that you can attend and participate in. So for example, I'm going to use the example of the walking affinity group. So here's what it would look like. All of our groups can mirror a mailing list. So in this case, if you see there's an email address, walking@community.nanog.org. You can function, it functions just like Mailman would. You can send an email to it and get an email response. You can set up your preferences to how you want to be notified, and I'll talk about that in a minute. If it's a group that you're interested in, if you look at over on the, which would be the right-hand side, you'll see a little bell icon next to topics. If that's something you're interested in being alerted on, you can click on that, and then emails would come to your notifications, depending on how you want to be notified. If you look up in the corner and up your right-hand corner, you see a little icon of my face. That little indicator for me says I have some messages that are there. So either I can see them when I log in, I can get them sent to me once a week, I can get them sent to me daily, I can get them sent to me immediately, just depending on how I choose. So Dinesh was wonderful to post in here, and Dinesh said, morning walks. So I clicked on that. And so here I saw an insert for joining me on a morning walk. So at the bottom you can see I said, sure, love to. So Dinesh and I had about a 7-kilometer walk this morning, about 2 hours, and had a lovely time. Too bad for those who missed out. If you look on the right-hand column underneath that little wrench icon, it'll says February 15th, the date of the entry, and how many replies were associated with that. Likewise, on that little lower bottom, if I wanted to only be notified about what's going on in this post, I could click on the bell icon at the lower right-hand corner, and I would only receive notifications on that particular thread and not the whole thread in and of itself. So you have control on how you can interact with it. In your preferences, I can then talk about notifications, and here I've listed emails. So I can determine how often I get emails related to this thread and how they work, or how the forum in general. There's also drills down many preferences you can set for yourself. So you can interact with it through a web browser, or you can also interact it via email. So as another example to look at, here is our mailing list. So we have a read-only feed of the NANOG mailing list that you can go into. If you go to community.nanog.org, you can search through it, the complete mailing list from its inception. I guess there's something like 51,000 posts in here. And you're able to go in and find a post that you're interested in, something recent. Here's digging in, so a recent post on VPN connections. Again, you can see off to the right-hand side, this was posted on February 10th. There's one of 43 threads connected to it. How long ago was the last thread? Again, I can choose to be notified just on this particular thread. And you can see there in the block who all has connected and commented on that thread. So again, right now, Mailman is read-only, but just kind of give you an idea of how the community server can work and function for you. So the affinity groups that we have starting out will be events and social gathering, women in technology, diversity and tech, coffee, kids, LGBTQT+, running, walking, whiskey connoisseurs, yoga, automation, DNS, IRRD, RPKI, and security. Again, if there's any groups that you're looking for that you're not seeing, please let us know, and we're happy to add them for you. So if you have any suggestions, please send them to feedback@nanog.org. So moving into program committee updates, up next we're going to have Elizabeth Cully present. Elizabeth Cully is the program committee secretary. She also works as a peering coordinator for Comcast. And Liz Cully went down this path of trying to explore how the pandemic affected NANOG events. And God bless her heart, she went down this rabbit hole and she found all this data about our programs, how they work and how they operate. It's an amazing undertaking, and my little nickname for her is Data, because when you see what she's done, it's absolutely amazing. So that being said, go ahead and roll the video. She couldn't attend in personally, but she's with us in spirit.
Thank you for having me here today. So the purpose of this research project was to see how the pandemic impacted NANOG attendance, and it grew to look at how NANOG attendance has evolved over time. So we start with attendance data from 72 NANOGs that we have records for. The records actually start in February 1998 in Albuquerque, and the average number of attendees across all these NANOGs is around 667 individuals per NANOG. What we see, though, is that there has been a little bit of a difference. Between 1998 and 2015, average attendance was 515. Between 2015 and the start of the pandemic, March 2020, the average was over 1,000. And for the past 4 virtual NANOGs, it's been around 745. We do see that by season, June NANOGs are 14% more well attended than February NANOGs, which are around 596 on average. And the October-November NANOG kind of splits the difference. And a lot of people, if you've been to NANOG recently, you kind of wonder, what was it like all the way back then in 10, 12, where NANOGs were much smaller? Prior to the pandemic, we were having 1,000 up to 1,300 people at NANOG. And back in the day, it was 500, 600 people. And you can actually find that out because today's in-person attendance is close to 500. And so it's basically like going back in time 10 years to be at a NANOG that is much smaller and more intimate. So what we know is that 18,282 individuals have come to NANOG at least once. The majority of people, so 77% at NANOG, really only attend once or twice. There have 4% of people, though, that's about 733, have come more than 10 times. And I think we can kind of consider these people to be regulars. We know that there were 210 people who attended between 21 and 40 times, 31 who attended between 40 and 60 times, and 9 people attended between 61 and 70 times. There are 22 individuals who have attended more than 50 times. And this is a list of people who have attended more than 50. So we do have records missing for the first 11 NANOGs. So these numbers are relative. They reflect only the 72 NANOGs that we have attendance records for. And I just wanted to point out, though, that the people on this list are not just people who have attended NANOG very often. These are people who have contributed hugely to NANOG as an organization. We know that Steve and Patrick are currently on the board of directors. Avi, Richard, and Tony are giving talks at this NANOG. If you put together all of the presentations that John, Bill, Mark, Aaron, and Dwayne have given, it's almost 100. That's enough talks to completely fill 4 3-day NANOGs with talks. Ren, Joe, Jared, Greg, and Tony have all served on the program committee and on the board of directors in the past. Betty was our previous executive director. And we have on this list people from other industry organizations that we're close to, we partner with, we do business with. John, Leslie, and Mark from Aaron, and Aaron Hughes from Caring DB. And this list also includes founders of NANOG, people who were there from the inception, like Larry and Steve. So we certainly appreciate all of these individuals for everything that they have done. So if you're at a NANOG, though, while 75% of people do really only come once or twice, if you are at a NANOG and you meet somebody, it is more likely that they will have been to NANOG several times before. Looking at data from the past 3 years, 9 NANOGs, an average of 63% of attendees have attended before and 37% are first-timers. That first virtual NANOG was inverted from the norm, with 63% first-timers and 37% of returnees. And since then, the average number of first-timers has remained consistent while the numbers of returnees has fallen. And sometimes you hear the question asked, as people look around and say, how many people here at NANOG are here to watch the speakers and really attend the conference versus how many are here to do business and socialize? And this chart, I think, kind of answers that question. Because if we look at previous to the pandemic, when we were there in person, we had an average of around 750 returnees. And after the pandemic, when we were really just virtual, it's around 500 returnees, which is a drop off of around 250 individuals. So they dropped off because obviously during virtual NANOG, it's much more difficult to socialize and do business. So 250 individuals across, we don't know the total number, but it ranges from around 25 to 40% could have been of the attendees who were attending previously, no longer attending, were in theory there to socialize and do business. So NANOG has been hosted in 38 different cities in North America. This is the 35 cities that we actually have attendance records for. The most frequently used city is San Francisco, which we were at 6 times, followed by Atlanta 5 times, Ann Arbor 4 times, Washington, D.C. 4 times, and San Jose 4 times. And what you're looking at here, this graph is showing the y-axis, the vertical is showing the average number of attendees at this site, and the number on top is the number of times that we are at this site. So you can see that the virtual NANOG had the most attendees total with over 1,000, and we had 4 virtuals. San Francisco, we had just under 1,000 on average, and we've been there 6 times. Chicago, we had 750, and we've only been there once. So that is basically how to read this chart. Of the 18,000 attendees who attended, they represented 4,781 different companies. This data is really the most surprising that I was able to pull out of the attendance records. 18% of attendees, that's 3,340 individuals, had at least one instance where they specified no company affiliation, meaning they attended NANOG without saying who they were representing at that point. That's 12%. That's 5,990 instances of attendance where no company was specified. And I think this is really interesting, and it's something I'd actually like to dig into a little more. Why did this happen? Did this happen because people couldn't be bothered to put their company down, or people really attending NANOG without even doing it for their company or place of work? I think it's an interesting question. So these are the companies that most often send representatives to NANOG. Every incremental number here is not an individual, it's an instance of attendance by an individual. And these are companies that we all know and work with and work for: Bayonet, Cisco, NTT, Juniper. And we certainly appreciate all these companies who do send their people to NANOG. So there were 247 different colleges and universities that have been represented at NANOG. The University of Oregon had the most instances of attendance, followed by the University of Colorado at Boulder and USC. There are at each NANOG an average of about 18 different schools in attendance at NANOG. So in total, across all NANOGs, there have been 1,711, it's about 3.6% of attendees who are there from a college or university. And then just looking more closely at the past 5 years, both total numbers as well as a percentage of attendees have fluctuated. So here on the left, we're looking at the total number of attendees for the past 5 years, averaging around 30 prior to the pandemic. That first virtual, really, we got a huge jump to 124 attendees from a university. And then since then, it's down to around an average of maybe 30. And then on the right, we have percentages. And we can see that first virtual NANOG, where we had 124 university students, that accounted for almost 6% of all attendees at that NANOG. You can see that number has kind of fallen off since then to about 2%. So the number of colleges and universities represented at each NANOG fluctuated. And so this chart is showing how many. We can see that prior to the pandemic, there was a peak of about 16 schools represented. Well, let's ignore the 65 different schools that were represented in the first virtual NANOG. But afterward, there have been, really, even ignoring the 65, actually a peak of 31 different schools per NANOG. And at the last NANOG, NANOG 83, there were 9 different schools and universities represented. So finally, I wanted to talk about NANOG sponsors. So there have been 56 host sponsors of NANOG, and we absolutely appreciate the support of every sponsor that we have. 13 sponsors hosted more than once. And I wanted to kind of draw out here, I put red asterisks next to companies that they either no longer exist, they have been bought, they've changed names for whatever reason, they're not around anymore. And there was a debate about, should we leave the name of these companies on as is, or should we change them to whatever they turned into? And I think it's actually more interesting this way. As we look back at the companies that have sponsored NANOG, it's a little bit of a throwback into time. So that's it. I hope that you guys have gotten something out of this presentation, and I look forward to seeing everybody at future NANOGs. Thank you.
This was great. Thanks, Elizabeth. We're going to continue next with the updates, the program committee updates, and we'll come back to the Q&A towards the end. I'm here to share with you highlights of our program committee strategy meeting that was held on January of 21st of this year. The entire program committee joined, and this was a Friday afternoon. Everybody was very active, spent time looking at reflecting back on 2021, the progress that we made last year, the potential changes that we considered making, talked about lessons learned. We also spent time looking ahead, kind of for what should we focus this year, and related to the program structure. Again, I want to highlight that the program committee continues to focus on building the best program possible. We are passionate about that, and we continue to work hard in that area. Retrospective of last year, we improved the program flow by introductions. We introduced scripts for session moderators. You probably noticed that. We think this helps with more consistent experience. We started sharing introductions with speakers ahead of time. We found that to be helpful to help people prepare to come up on stage, kind of set the tone. Also, again, Elizabeth has done a tremendous job with collecting data. And as Edward mentioned, we look to make more decisions around data. This is something that we find to be helpful. Speaker surveys, we evolved that to where we are sharing, allowing for speakers to compare, contrast their results with other presentations. Again, the value of coming here up on stage and presenting is that at the end you get to receive honest feedback to help improve. And finally, here within the program committee, we have a handbook. This is where we document kind of the roles and the things that we do behind the scene to build the program. We added a checklist for mentor-mentee training. This is just one example. Potential changes that we talked about is considering we send annual or biannual surveys in addition to the surveys that we receive during the conference. We also talked about implementing a Net Promoter System. Another topic was the proposal to allocate a budget for us to enhance the program. Again, I think this is a good example where we continue to look at what can we do to make the program, and if we had some funding, would that help? So we're working closely with the board to hopefully get approval for that. In addition, automation is key for us to be faster and better at what we do. Again, behind the scene, the process is where if you submit a talk, a member of the program committee is assigned, and that person helps you through the steps you have to follow for reviewing the talks. And there is a step there with voting. Every member of the program committee has to vote. And we found that if we have a way to notify on a regular basis members of the program committee, they'll be more active in voting for talks, so we can submit talks early on. And finally, we are, as updates are made to talks, to actual presentations, we're looking to ways to highlight that talk needs to be revisited. And again, this is another way for us to streamline the process of voting. Lessons learned, quick observations on hybrid meetings. We continue to strive and do our best to manage in person versus pre-recorded. Obviously, we have an interest to have people in person when possible. Also, I think we found a good way to balance with remote and in-person Q&A and with all the technologies that we have available. Related to panels, we decided that either we're going to do a panel here in person or either fully remote. We're not going to try to do a hybrid. And we're also looking to start additional subcommittees within the program committee so that we can kind of have more focused groups on certain areas and empower more the program committee members. And finally, planning ahead, we talked about specific themes for upcoming NANOG meetings, but as requested popular topics. Again, an example is for our next NANOG meeting in Montreal. June 6th is the 10th anniversary of IPv6 launch, so that's going to be a big one for us. Starting to look at presentations beyond just tech talks, but more around helping develop soft skills. We found those to be well received in the past, so we'll continue to work on that. And one small change we plan to make is where we'll make it easier for you to see as an attendees if somebody's going to be presenting in person versus being virtual. Now we're going to move into polls.
So we're having just one poll question going today. And if you guys are interested in doing that poll, here's where you can link to it and get there. You can also go to our event page. And in our event page, you'll see at the lower bottom, they'll say live poll. And the question that's being asked is, how are you planning to attend NANOG 85? Are you planning to attend in person? Are you planning to attend virtually? Are you uncertain? Are you going to wait till the videos come out on YouTube? So just to get a feedback from there, the poll won't appear on screen here, but if you go to our website, you'll be able to see those live poll results, which opens up, because we had a really compressed time, which open up for a little bit of time for Q&A if anyone has any questions for Augie or myself. You guys are still asleep. All right. Well, that being said, thank you all for your time.